a werewolf shifter romance audiobook. Before we dive in, if you're into alpha males who'd fight the world for their mate and heroines who finally light their own fire, go ahead and hit subscribe. Come run with our pack. Step into the world of Alpha Lord Macron and Claire. She's silent, unranked, stuck in the shadows and convinced she doesn't matter. He's a powerful alpha, crushed by the weight of duty. Their world shouldn't touch, but fate doesn't care about rules or broken lavender scents that haunt the night. At the Alliance Ball, everything explodes. A buried bond bursts into the open, shattering one life and shaking the whole pack to its core. And when the alpha lifts his head and roars mine, it isn't love he's promising. It's the start of a war. Get ready. Things are about to get wild. The cold marble didn't care about her bare feet. It bit at her skin, a chill she'd learned to ignore because nothing stung quite like Madame Verina's voice. More. Put your back into it, Claire. That wine stain. There, do you see it? Claire saw nothing. The floor gleamed, polished, so bright it threw back the fading evening light. Still, she scrubbed. Her world shrank to polished floors, silver dust, and the heavy, sharp scent of Verena's scorn. She knew how to survive in it. Stay quiet. Stay busy. Stay out of sight. Don't dawdle, Verena snapped, her words crisp as shattered glass. She took an overdramatic sip of her icy aperitif. Not that anyone at the gathering will notice a common, unranked stray like you. Thump. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Claire shut her eyes. The words weren't new. They were old shadows, echoing through this grand house and rattling around her head at night. Unworthy. Common. Unlovable. But stray felt fresh. Another wound for the collection. And deep down, she believed everyone. Verena's shadow loomed over her. You'll wear the plain brown gown I left for you. Don't speak unless spoken to. Understood? Claire nodded, her throat locked tight. The brown dress, of course. The color of dust, of shadows, of someone meant to be ignored. It was perfect. All she hoped for tonight, all she'd dare pray for, if she still believed in anything, was to slip through the Alpha Alliance Ball without anyone seeing her. Disappear into the crowd. That night, the air thrummed with energy. Laughter and music tangled with the wild sense of dozens of powerful packs swirling under the crystal lights. It was dazzling. It was terrifying. Her breath snagged in her chest. Out here, her invisibility felt paper-thin. Before she could slip away, Verena's fingers clamped onto her arm. Remember your place, Claire. Claire twisted free, melting into the deep shadows at the edge of the ballroom. She pressed herself behind a marble column, wide enough to hide her from the world. She watched. The other she-wolves sparkled in jewel-bright gowns, their laughter light and easy. Claire felt a hollow ache bloom inside her. She didn't want their beauty or their status. She just wanted to know what it felt like to be seen, to be wanted for something besides the work she did. Maybe she was made to vanish. Maybe that was the only way to stay safe. But then, something changed. A scent sliced through the party. Nothing floral or spicy, nothing like perfume. It was sharp, wild, cold as mountain air after a storm, tangled up with leather and danger. It curled around her, tugged at her, made her feel discovered. She pressed herself tighter to the marble, heart thudding. The scent felt like a spotlight. She was caught. Go away, she whispered, not sure who she meant. Please, just let me stay invisible. Up on the balcony, Alpha Lord Macron carried the weight of his title like a boulder on his shoulders. Down below, the packs mingled, a sea of faces, a tangle of alliances, a market for power. His beta, Torin, stood close, voice low. The Silver Dawn Alpha brought his eldest daughter, Lady Kala. A union there secures our eastern mineral access for a generation. Macron let out a tired breath. Torin was loyal, practical, and right. Or the Northern Pass Alpha's daughter. Their trade routes bring in more than anyone else this side of the mountains. She's eager. Macron's jaw tightened. Eager. They were all eager. He looked down. Ambitious mothers, hopeful daughters, their perfume thick in the air, desperation just as strong. His father, hard, effective, had nearly shattered their pack, the Black Mountain, with constant feuding. Macron had spent every day since patching things up, piece by piece, paying the price in exhaustion. His pack needed strength. It needed an alliance, a Luna who could handle politics. Love had nothing to do with it. "I see them," Torin, Macron said, his voice low and raw with bone-deep weariness. His goal for the night was simple and impossible. Project absolute strength and find a suitable asset. A partner, a queen for his pack. He hated it. With every fiber of his being, he hated it. Torin pointed. "There, Kala, the one in the emerald green. She's a perfect match on paper." Macron gave a non-committal grunt. He didn't want a match on paper. He didn't know what he wanted. He just knew it wasn't this. Not only that, but the pressure from his elders was becoming unbearable. A constant whisper in his ear about duty and legacy. They never let him forget the chaos his father left behind, or the fragile peace he now fought to maintain. He turned his attention back to the crowd. His senses on high alert, cataloging every scent, every shift in the air, every potential threat. He was an alpha. It's what he did. But then it happened. As if pulled by a string, his head snapped to the left. A scent unlike any other he had ever known. It wasn't perfume. It was elemental. It smelled of bruised lavender after a cold rain, of hidden resilience, and of a tiny, defiant ember of fire. It was the most incredible thing he had ever smelled, and it called to something deep inside him, something primal. The man in him was intrigued. But the wolf, the beast that was the core of his soul, rose up and roared a single, undeniable word: mate. The feeling of being watched was so intense it made her skin prickle with 1,000 tiny needles. She didn't know what scared her more: the intoxicating scent that refused to leave her alone, or the sudden dead silence that was falling over the clearing. The music faltered. The laughter died. As the silence stretched, she dared to peek around the edge of the marble column, and her world stopped. Everyone was staring, but not at each other. They were staring at him. Alpha Lord Macron, the most powerful, most desired, most feared alpha in the entire territory. And he was walking directly towards her. Her thoughts spun. No, it's a mistake. He's looking at someone behind me. He can't be. But there was no one behind her. Only the cold, solid marble of the column. The crowd parted for him, like the sea parting for a storm. Every step he took was heavy, deliberate, a drum beat counting down to her doom. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, painful rhythm. "Run," her mind screamed. "Hide." But her feet were rooted to the ground, trapped by the weight of hundreds of eyes, and by the raw predatory intensity in his. Oh, Moon, his eyes. They weren't just dark. They were silver-flecked obsidian, like a wolf's eyes, and they were locked on her. Without warning, the world narrowed to just the space between them. The air thickened, growing hot and heavy. She could feel the bond now, a living thing, a humming wire pulling her towards him, even as every instinct screamed at her to flee. In a single heartbeat, the world shifted. He stopped just a few feet away, close enough for her to see the tiny scar above his dark eyebrow, close enough to feel the heat rolling off his body. He said nothing. He just looked at her, and in his gaze, she didn't see the disgust or pity she expected. She saw hunger. She saw possession. She saw a terrifying, unwavering conviction that shattered her from the inside out. When her name left his lips, it wasn't a question. It was a claim. Claire. And before she could move, before she could breathe, before her mind could even process the impossible reality of it all, he said the one word that sealed her fate and destroyed her world forever. Mine. The word hung in the air between them. Mine. It was a truth torn from the very core of his soul, raw and absolute. For a single glorious heartbeat, the world was perfect. He had found her, the other half of his spirit. The scent of bruised lavender and hidden fire that was hers, and hers alone, was the only thing that was real. He expected something. Recognition, a sigh. the same soul-deep pull that was currently trying to rip his wolf out through his skin. Instead, what he got was terror. Pure, gut-wrenching terror. Her eyes, the color of wet moss, wide and bottomless, filled with a panic so profound it was like a physical blow. She flinched. She actually flinched away from him as if he had struck her. In that moment, the triumphant roar of his wolf died, replaced by a confused, wounded whine. He saw her then, truly saw her. Not just as his mate, but as a terrified woman huddled in the shadows, her body as rigid as a cornered animal's. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. As if fate demanded it, the stunned silence of the crowd finally broke. A wave of whispers, sharp and venomous, rippled through the clearing.
Who is she?
A nobody. Look at that common dress. She must be a household servant. But then, one voice, shrill and familiar, cut through the others. What is the meaning of this? Step away from my daughter-in-law, Alpha Macron. It was Verena. Her face twisted with disbelief and raw, burning rage. She lunged forward, hands curled like claws. She's nothing. Just a worthless, unranked stray. You're making a mistake. A low growl rumbled in Macron's chest before he could stop it. The threat in that sound cut through the ballroom, dragging everyone's attention. He turned on Verena, his eyes cold and sharp. She, he said, voice snapping like a whip, is my mate. You won't speak about her like that again. Hatred flashed in Verena's eyes, but fear smothered it. She shrank back. Good. That told him everything. He needed to get Claire out of here, now. Before these jackals tore her apart, before fear swallowed her whole. He crossed to her in a few quick steps and reached for her hand. He meant to be gentle, to promise safety with his touch. But when his fingers brushed her skin, Claire gasped and tried to jerk away. Her panic hit him like ice in the gut. He gripped her wrist, steady, not cruel. He wouldn't let her go. He couldn't. You're coming with me, he said. Not a question. Not a plea. An order. No, please. Her voice barely made it out, thin and strangled. It hurt him, even as it made him more determined. Torin, he barked. Two black mountain warriors appeared at his side, silent and solid as stone. We're leaving. He turned, pulling Claire behind him, shielding her from the stares that stabbed at them from every direction. He felt their judgment, their shock, their fury. Let them have it. Alliances, treaties, everyone's expectations. None of it mattered now. He'd found her. That was enough. At the edge of the crowd, Verena hurled one final curse, her voice shrill and cracked. You don't know what she is. Her lineage is poison. You'll regret this, Alpha. You all will. Her words stabbed at his back, poisonous and sharp. He didn't slow down. He just clung tighter to the trembling woman beside him, marching them both into the storm.
Mine.
That word wasn't just a word. It was a brand, a cage, a weight that shattered her fragile shield of invisibility. Claire's world dissolved into a blur of panic and silent, staring eyes. Macron's dark gaze pinned her in place. Every instinct in her screamed, run.
Hide.
Disappear. But he moved toward her, and time seemed to stop. When he spoke her name, fear crawled down her spine. This can't be real. It has to be a nightmare. But the heat coming off him, the scent of mountain wind and strength, his hand closing around her wrist, those were real. Too real. No, please. The words vanished into the air, drowned out by his force of will. He pulled her out from her hiding place, straight into the center of the nightmare. The crowd's whispers hit her like slaps. Every stare landed like a stone. She stumbled, shoes catching on the floor, but his grip kept her upright. Her body tried to shrink away, but he was unmovable. She was being led, helpless, right into the fire. Faces blurred by her, shocked, angry, judging. Lady Calla in her emerald gown, glaring. Other alphas, cold and watchful. And her mother-in-law, Verena's face twisted in silent fury. Claire squeezed her eyes shut, hoping if she couldn't see them, maybe they'd disappear. But she still felt their hatred pressing in. Worthless.
Stray. Poison.
Verena's final shriek echoed in her mind. A curse, a warning. Poison lineage? What did that mean?
She'd always sensed something.
Verena had whispered about shadows in Claire's past, some secret shame. Was this it? The night air hit her as they finally stepped away from the ballroom, music and lights fading behind. Two huge warriors boxed them in, making the world feel smaller, the cage tighter. She was being taken, stolen right out of her life, and nobody dared stop him. He was an alpha. He did whatever he wanted, took whatever he wanted, and now he'd taken her. Her chest tightened, breath coming sharp and uneven. She glanced up at him, desperate for something, maybe mercy, maybe anger. Even that would be better than this. But his face was stone, jaw clenched, eyes locked ahead. He hadn't looked at her since he'd claimed her. Not once. Somehow, that stung more than rage. It was like she wasn't even a person to him.
Just a prize.
Just a thing. And she let it happen because really, what choice did she have? The ride felt endless, suffocating. They weren't in some fancy carriage, but flying through the forest on a path only his pack seemed to know. The moon flickered through the trees. Macron sat behind her on a massive warhorse, her small frame pressed tight against his chest. Every tremor in her body went straight through him. He could smell the salt of her tears, even though she didn't make a sound. The alpha in him wanted to break the silence, wanted to force her to look at him, to feel that strange, living bond between them. But the man, well, he was lost. He didn't know how to fight something he couldn't see. How do you battle someone's ghosts? Claire stared into the darkness, his chest like a wall behind her. His scent wrapped around her, pine, power, and something else, something that tugged at a part of her she'd tried to bury. Her wolf, the one she'd shoved so far down she barely remembered it, fluttered awake for the first time in years. It was faint and strange, and only made her more afraid. She bit her lip, holding in a sob. Crying never got her anywhere. It wasn't going to help now. Macron found himself watching her instead of the path. The way her hair curled at her neck, how her shoulders looked too fragile under all that fear. He spotted a thin, pale scar on her wrist. Old, but unmistakable, the kind of mark left by ropes. Fury hit him so hard he almost growled out loud. Who did this to her? Who dared touch what was his? He clenched his teeth, holding the anger inside. Asking her now would only scare her more, but he'd find out. He'd tear the world apart if he had to. The woods thickened, shadows pressing in. Claire felt the air turn colder, heavier. They'd left her territory behind. Dread settled deep in her bones. She was really alone now, trapped with the most powerful man she'd ever met. What was he going to do with her? All those stories her mother-in-law told about cruel alphas and girls who vanished came rushing back. She looked at his hands on the reins, huge, rough, strong enough to break her. But he didn't hurt her. His grip was steady, not cruel.
Why?
Why her? It didn't add up. By the time they arrived, the moon hung high and cold overhead. The Black Mountain Fortress wasn't a home. It was a fortress, all jagged gray stone and towering walls. Watchtowers glared down, the gate big enough to swallow an army. Power oozed from every brick. This place was Macron's world, his stronghold, his safety. But when he slid off the horse and lifted her down, he saw it through her eyes. For her, this was a prison. Her face, pale in the moonlight, was frozen with despair. She stumbled as soon as her feet touched the ground. She was here. The ride was over. For Claire, it felt like the end of everything. The fortress gate slammed shut behind them, a deep, echoing boom, final and absolute. It was the sound of a door locking, a story ending. Right then, she knew she'd never see her home again. It hadn't been much, but it was hers. A woman waited in the courtyard, sharp eyes, graying hair, expression hard as stone. She dipped her head to Macron. Alpha, we weren't expecting you. Her gaze flicked to Claire, cold and measuring. Plans changed, Macron said, his voice rolling through the huge entryway. He still held Claire's arm, warm, heavy, impossible to escape. Show my mate to the Luna's chambers. Make sure she gets what she needs. His mate. The word felt like a joke, some part she was forced to play. The woman, Mistress Rihanna, just nodded, face unreadable. This way, Mississippi. Macron let go of her without another word, turning away to murmur something low to his guard. The loss of his touch was a shock. Her skin went cold and empty where his hand had been. She trailed after Rihanna down long, echoing stone hallways. Her shoes barely made a sound on those thick, expensive carpets. Every step took her deeper into danger. The walls were covered with tapestries, bloody hunts, wild battles, history soaked into the fabric. The air smelled like beeswax, old money, and underneath it all, something wild and unmistakably male. His scent. It was everywhere. They stopped at a pair of huge carved doors. Rihanna pushed them open and motioned her inside. You'll have a bath. Clothes are coming. Then she vanished, shutting the doors behind her. The click echoed. Suddenly Claire was alone in a silence, so heavy it felt like it could break her. The room was more than a room. It was a vault stuffed with things she'd never dreamed of. A fire snapped and popped in a stone hearth big enough to walk into. The bed was a mountain. Furs, silks, pillows piled high. A window stretched from floor to ceiling, staring out over a black, endless forest. But the mirror caught her. Enormous, framed in silver, and inside it her. Pale, ragged, lost in a shapeless brown dress. She looked like a ghost, someone who'd wandered in by accident. Her chest hurt. She looked like a weed in a garden meant for roses. Instinct took over. She slipped behind a velvet chaise, curled up on the floor, knees to her chest. The darkest corner. The safest place. She knew how to hide. Her mind spun. What was this place? Why had he brought her here? Her mother-in-law's last words ran through her memory. Poisoned lineage. What did that even mean? Verena had always hinted at some old shame tied to her family, but never said more. Maybe this was it. Maybe Macron had just claimed a curse. And when he figured it out, when he saw what she really was, what then? She pressed her eyes shut. The mirror's image wouldn't leave her. Just a worthless girl pretending she belonged. Someone knocked at the door, soft but sharp enough to make her heart jump. Macron stood outside, his hand half raised. He hesitated. That was new. The Alpha of Black Mountain never hesitated. He did what he wanted, took what he needed, never doubted. But somehow, this terrified, trembling woman had done what no enemy ever could. She'd made him uncertain. He still remembered the panic pouring off her when he touched her. He knew, deep down, his usual tactics wouldn't work here. Authority, force, that commanding presence, useless with her. Worse than useless. Cruel. She flinched, shrank away, tried to vanish right in front of him. And that scar on her wrist, he kept seeing it. It burned in his mind, stoked a cold anger in his gut. Someone had hurt her. Someone had spent years breaking her down. He decided right then he'd be the one to help put her back together. He'd have to go slow. He knocked again and slipped inside. She wasn't by the fire, not on the bed, nowhere near the window. For a second, panic flared. Then he saw her, huddled in the shadows behind a chair, trying to disappear in her own room. That sight cut deep. He moved carefully, hands out, posture open and easy, stopping well away from her. Claire. She looked up. Her eyes were huge, shining in the dim light. She looked trapped, ready to run if he so much as breathed wrong.
She didn't speak.
I know this is. He stopped, lost for words. He was a leader, a warrior, a negotiator. But this? He had no idea what to say. This is sudden, he finally said, his voice rougher than he wanted. I didn't mean to scare you. Her silence didn't waver. It was a wall, stronger than any armor. He tried again, took one careful step closer. The mate bond, it's sacred. It means you're the other half of my soul. It means I'll protect you no matter what. It means you're my equal. He caught a flicker in her eyes, nothing close to understanding, and definitely not acceptance. Just raw disbelief. like he'd told her the sky turned green overnight. Without thinking, he moved toward her. Bad idea. She recoiled so hard against the wall, he half expected her to just vanish right through it. He stopped cold. The air between them practically buzzed, her fear, his frustration. He could command armies, snap his fingers, and end a rival, no problem. But cross 10 feet to comfort his own mate. Impossible. His wolf raged inside, desperate to go to her, mark her, claim her, show her who he was. He shut it down. If he gave in, he knew he'd break her completely. So he did the last thing he wanted. He backed away. Rest, he said, voice rough and low. Rihanna will take care of you. He left, the door clicking shut with a final, heavy sound that felt like failure. Lying awake that night, one thing was clear. He couldn't win this fight with strength. He needed a different kind of power. He'd show her respect. He'd show her she belonged, not hidden away. Tomorrow, at the council dinner, he'd start. He'd force normalcy, even if it killed him. And maybe, just maybe, she'd start to see he wasn't the monster in her mind. Morning came. A silent girl brought a dress, deep sapphire, softer than anything Claire had ever felt. Beautiful. But she couldn't bring herself to touch it. She just stared while it lay on the bed, a bright, impossible eye. Wearing it felt like betraying herself. She knew what she was, the brown dress, not midnight silk. But there was no choice. That night, they led her into a grand dining hall. The table stretched out, polished and dark, crowded with a dozen older wolves, all stern faces, sharp eyes. His council. At the head, in a chair that was basically a throne, Macron stood as soon as she walked in. His gaze found her. He pulled out the chair beside him. Not a request, an order. Her feet weighed a ton, but she made them move. Every step dragged under their stare. Dinner was torture. The food looked rich, but she couldn't swallow. Conversations swirled around her, pack politics, borders, trade. She didn't get a word of it. She kept her eyes down, hands clenched, wishing she could disappear, but they wouldn't let her. One elder, Master Soren, with a mouth like a knife and eyes like flint, turned straight to her. "Tell us, girl," he said, his voice slick and mocking. "What are the old river pack's greatest assets? Your mother-in-law isn't important. What's your lineage?" Blank. Her mind just shut down. Panic clawed at her. Lineage? Assets? She knew how to scrub silver and avoid Verena. That was it. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She could only stare at him, heart thudding so loud it hurt. She glanced at Macron, begging for help. He just stared back, jaw clenched, letting her drown. The silence stretched, brutal. Soren smiled, a thin, cruel thing that said, "I knew it." "An alpha is only as strong as his Luna," he went on, every word loaded. "The Black Mountain Pack needs a queen, a strategist, a warrior, not a shadow." That word shadow hit like a punch. It was the truth she'd carried all her life. She was a shadow, and now she dragged this powerful alpha down with her. Before she could answer, a growl tore through the hall. Low, rough, possessive. Macron's hand slammed the table, rattling silverware. His eyes blazed, dark and furious. "You will respect my mate, Soren," he snapped, "or I'll rip out your tongue." No one doubted he meant it. Soren went pale and shrank into his seat. But even that show of protection didn't feel like rescue. It felt like he'd pinned her under a spotlight, made her failure even louder. She didn't feel protected, just exposed, just owned. Humiliation burned right through her. She shoved her chair back without thinking, the legs screeching against the stone. Then she turned and ran. Out of the hall, away from all those watching eyes, away from the alpha who just stood before his entire council and claimed her a nobody, a shadow without a rank, as his. As she ran, her mother-in-law's laughter echoed in her mind. The fire in Macron's study didn't touch the cold anchored in his bones. He stared into the flames, but all he could see were her eyes, wide and broken. He'd failed her. Out there at dinner, in front of everyone, he thought he was showing her respect by letting her speak for herself. Instead, he'd thrown her to the wolves, his wolves. The shame sat thick and bitter on his tongue. Then the heavy oak door creaked. Torin came in, face tight, all the calm he usually wore gone. Urgency flickered in his eyes. Macron's voice came out rough. "What is it?" "News from the old river pack." Torin paused, something he almost never did. "There are rumors." Spreading fast. Macron turned from the fire, dread knotting in his gut. "What rumors?" "They're saying she comes from poison blood," Torin said, voice low. Her parents weren't the loyal pack she believed. Verena, her mother-in-law, is behind it. She's telling everyone the girl's a curse.
Poison.
That she'll ruin any pack she joins. The air thickened, the fire's crackle fading into a dull roar. This wasn't just politics or elders grumbling about rank. This cut deeper. Verena wasn't just being cruel. She wanted to destroy Claire from the inside out, with lies aimed right at her worst fears. Suddenly, Macron saw it. Verena wasn't some spiteful guardian. She was a monster, and Claire was her prey. "She's trying to break her," Macron said, the words cold and sharp. His hands curled into fists, his wolf inside him snapping for blood, for vengeance. But then he pictured Claire, small and shaken in that endless hall. Raging wouldn't help. That would just prove Claire's fears. He needed more than defense. He had to build a new truth for her, something so strong, so undeniable, no rumor could touch it. The pack, and Claire, they had to see she wasn't a curse. She was his queen. And he'd make sure no one could question that again. Sleep didn't give Claire any peace. Her dreams tangled with judging faces, her mother-in-law's sneers, and the blazing stare of the alpha. She woke with a gasp, tangled in the soft sheets of a bed that felt more like a trap than a comfort. She'd run back here after the dinner, and hadn't left since. Now she felt hollow. A shadow, just like the elder called her. She couldn't decide what was worse, the wolves waiting outside or the voice in her head repeating Verena's words over and over. Worthless. Stray. Shadow. A quiet knock, and a servant girl slipped in with breakfast. That wasn't what broke her. It was the whispers from the hall as the door clicked shut. "Poison bloodline," one of them said. "Mistress Rihanna thinks the alpha will be ruined if he keeps her." The other voice snorted. "She'll bring nothing but rot to this pack."
The door closed.
Silence slammed down.
Poisoned. Ruin. Rot.
They hadn't meant for her to hear, but that made it worse. That was the truth they saw. The truth she'd been running from her whole life. It was real. She was poison. And just by being here, she was infecting this pack, infecting him. Everything shifted. There was only one thing left to do, the only way to save him from what she'd bring. She had to go. She moved without thinking, ignoring the fancy gowns in the wardrobe. Her hands found the dress she'd arrived in, plain brown, the only thing that felt like hers. Pulling it on felt like coming home. Her heart hammered, part fear, part resolve. She crept to the door. No plan, nowhere to go. She'd just run until her legs gave out, and vanish back into the shadows where she belonged. As her fingers brushed the icy iron latch, the door swung open right into her face. And there he stood, Alpha Lord Macron. He filled the doorway, broad-shouldered and solid, like he could hold up the mountain himself. His eyes, black as midnight, locked onto hers, then dipped to the plain brown dress. A muscle jumped in his jaw. "Going somewhere?" His voice barely more than a whisper, but it carried a warning. Her throat tightened. I can't stay here. I'm a curse. I'll ruin you." He stepped inside, shut the door behind him, and suddenly there was nothing left of the room but the narrow space between them.
No.
That single word landed like a stone. She froze. He moved closer. "My council questions me. Rival alphas break treaties. My own pack gossips behind my back. None of that ruins me, Claire." Another step, and the heat from him pressed against her. His eyes burned. Intense, but not angry. Something raw, something stripped bare. "But if you go?" His voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. "If you run because you believe the lies she told you, the ones meant to break you. That destroys me. Her breath caught. The space between them felt electric. Before her mind could catch up, he reached for her hand. He did it gently. Come with me. Not a command. A plea. She barely knew she was moving as he led her out, down stone corridors, into the blinding light of the training yard. Warriors froze mid-swing. Councilmen fell silent, Soren's sneer frozen on his face. Every single eye in the Black Mountain pack turned to them, the alpha and the girl in the servant's dress he held by the hand. He walked her right to the center of the yard and turned. There's been whispering, Macron called out, his voice echoing off the stone. Lies meant to poison you against my choice, against your Luna. He lifted their joined hands, holding them up so everyone could see. This isn't politics. This isn't strategy. She's my mate, my other half. And I claim her, absolutely. He looked down at her, and in that instant, the world just fell away. Only him. His gaze caught hers, a silent promise that knocked the air right out of her chest. I won't ask for your loyalty, he said, the words for her alone, though everyone heard. I'll earn it. Then, with everyone watching, he bent and kissed her. It wasn't soft. It was fierce, a challenge thrown at her doubts, at the pack's whispers, at the whole world. It was raw, possessive, and real. Fire sparked under her skin. Deep inside, something shifted. A tiny spark that had almost died flared back to life. For the first time, a wild, impossible thought took root. What if he's right? When the kiss broke, silence crashed over the yard. Macron didn't look away from her. He watched the flush blooming on her cheeks, the fear fading, replaced by stunned wonder. He'd done it. He'd chosen her out loud for everyone to see. And for the first time, a crack appeared in those walls she built around herself. Maybe it was enough. Then the world snapped back into motion. Alpha, a scout, young and out of breath, ran into the yard, shoving past the silent crowd. He held out a sealed scroll. Message from Silver Dawn Pack. It's urgent. Ice slid through Macron's veins as he took the scroll, eyes never leaving Claire. He broke the seal and read. The message was short, brutal. The alliance between Silver Dawn and Black Mountain is over. We won't stand with an alpha who ties himself to poison blood. Our borders are closed. Everything just changed. This wasn't about rumors anymore. This was war. Like sharks catching the scent, Soren and the elders marched forward, faces dark with anger. You see? Soren spat. You've doomed us. For her, you broke an alliance generations old. You insulted our strongest allies. All for a shadow with no name. Macron crushed the scroll in his fist. He faced the council, stepped in front of Claire like a wall, his face cold and hard as stone. Silver Dawn are cowards, swayed by the lies of a bitter old woman. That alliance was a shackle. Now we're free. Free to be slaughtered, another elder snapped. Macron's voice went razor-sharp.
No.
Free to become stronger than we've ever been. But before either of them could get another word out, another messenger appeared, this one in the gray uniform of the High Council. He bowed low, face unreadable. Alpha Lord Macron of Black Mountain, he said, his voice slicing through the tension. By decree of the assembled alphas, you and your chosen are summoned to an emergency session of the council. A grievance of bloodline has been filed against you. You will answer for your claim. That was it, the last gauntlet thrown. This wasn't just a pact dispute anymore. This was a challenge, a trial, and Macron and Claire would have to stand together. The training yard turned into a blur of hostile, curious faces. The High Council's messenger vanished as quickly as he'd come, but the words he left behind hung in the air, cold and sharp as barbed wire. Grievance of bloodline. The phrase echoed in the sudden silence. It was a formal declaration of war, and somehow, she'd become the battleground. Her first instinct, the one life had drilled deep into her bones, was to pull away from Macron, to fade back, to become the nobody everyone expected her to be. But then she felt the warmth of his hand, the steady, unbreakable grip. He didn't let go. Not when the alliance splintered. Not now with the council dragging them in like criminals.
He just held on.
Something inside her shifted. Not a tidal wave of courage, but a stubborn little spark, a flame he'd lit with his kiss and kept alive with his loyalty. She wasn't going to let it go out. Not this time. Later that night, she found him in his study. The place smelled like old leather, wood smoke, and him. He stood over a giant map spread across a heavy oak table, shoulders tight with the burden she'd put there. He didn't notice her at first, he was so lost in thought. She broke the silence, voice small but steady. "What is it?" she asked. "This council?" Macron looked up, eyes dark and burning with a tired kind of fire. For a second, she worried he'd brush her off, tell her to leave it alone. But he didn't.
He just pointed at the map.
"It's a gathering of the most powerful alphas around," he said, his voice low. "They are the law. They can start wars, strip an alpha of his title. They can even dissolve a mating." Her heart stopped.
Dissolve?
As in a race? Rip them apart? "Because of me," she whispered, guilt settling heavy in her gut. "Because of my blood." "No," he snapped, voice hard. He came around the table and stood right in front of her. "It's a lie, Claire. Something she made up to hurt you, and me, through you. They'll listen to her because they're weak. Because they're afraid of our strength. Because they're just looking for any excuse to watch me fall." She knew, deep down, what mattered now wasn't the truth everyone else believed, but the trust she saw in his eyes. She'd spent her whole life running, hiding, shrinking herself to fit the shadows. But running had only brought her here, to the edge of something new. This time, she wasn't backing down. She met his gaze, that stubborn spark inside her flaring into a steady warmth. "Then teach me," she said, tasting the words like something new and fierce. "Teach me about the council. About our enemies, our friends, about my parents. The truth. I'm not standing beside you at that council as a shadow, Macron. I'll stand as your mate." His face softened, the sharp lines around his eyes easing, and a raw, unguarded pride swept over him. He reached out, thumb brushing her cheek. "I'll tell you everything," he promised. And right then, she wasn't a curse or a shadow. She was his choice. And she was finally ready to fight for it. Her words echoed in him. "I will stand there as your mate." That courage, shaky and new, was more precious than anything he'd ever held. In that moment, love for her hit him so hard he had to fight to stay standing. Let the world bring armies. Let the council bring their rules. If she stood with him, nothing could break them. He realized then he had to show her, not just tell her, what she meant to him. "There's a place," he said, voice scratchy with feeling. "A place I want to show you. I've never shown it to anyone else." He led her out of the fortress, through a hidden gate, down a winding path that twisted deep into the forest. The air got warmer, thick with night-blooming jasmine and the scent of damp earth. Finally, the path opened into a hidden grotto. The waterfall crashed down over mossy rocks, feeding a hot spring so clear you could see every smooth stone at the bottom. Steam curled up into the cool night air. "This is beautiful," she whispered, wonder softening her voice. He hesitated, then said, "It was my mother's sanctuary." The words tasted strange. He almost never talked about her. His father's cruelty always seemed to drown her memory out, pushing it somewhere far away. "When things got bad, she'd come here," he went on. The water washed away the pain. Silence settled around them, heavy but safe. So he kept talking. He told her about a father whose strength twisted into something ugly. About a mother who was the only light in a dark house. About the weight he carried, always trying to be everything his father wasn't. Fair, strong, worthy of leading his pack. He didn't hold anything back. Not tonight. Claire listened. The moonlight softened her face, and her eyes understood. Then she told her own story. Not violence, not fists, just slow poison. Words that cut, whispers that made her feel worthless, day after day. A lonely girl who believed the monster who should have protected her. Something shifted between them as she spoke. The old, frayed bond that tied them together, raw, messy, turned into something deeper. They recognized the scars in each other. Two broken souls, finding pieces they didn't realize were missing. He slipped into the hot spring, the heat wrapping around him like a promise. He reached out. Claire. Her name hung between them. She paused for a heartbeat, then took his hand. She let her clothes fall away, graceful in the pale light, and followed him in. The water between them buzzed with heat. Her skin felt impossibly soft under his rough hands. He kissed her. Not like before in the courtyard. This was gentle, slow, almost reverent. A question, an answer, a prayer. He lost himself in her and found something like coming home. They moved together, caught in an old rhythm, something as ancient as the moon. He marked her neck, a claim that was more than physical. It sealed something between them, body and soul. She answered, meeting him with her own strength. Here, hidden away from the world, they weren't alpha and outcast. Just a wolf and his mate. Whole, for once. Safe. They lay tangled in the warm water, lost in each other. Neither noticed the quick flash of movement at the edge of the grotto. Neither heard the soft snap of a twig. They didn't know someone had seen everything. Miles away, deep in Old River territory, Verena smiled. Her scout, a distant cousin with old grudges, knelt before her, eyes bright with gossip. They were like animals, my lady, he whispered. In a hidden spring, he marked her. No question about their bond now. Good, Verena murmured, her words sweet with venom. She'd meant to ruin the girl's reputation, make everyone doubt her worth. But this was a gift. A weapon. The High Council loved their rules, their traditions. An alpha, openly obsessed with some cursed outsider, while alliances crumbled. They wouldn't see love, they'd see weakness. Corruption. She had what she needed. She wouldn't play the grieving mother-in-law anymore. She'd be the righteous voice, ready to tear down the rot threatening their world. Back at Black Mountain Fortress, things had finally calmed. Claire slept in Macron's bed, curled up in one of his shirts. For the first time, she actually looked peaceful. Macron watched her, heart swelling with a fierce, stubborn love. He'd protect this. Protect her. Whatever it took. Then a sharp knock echoed through the room. Torrin stepped in, face pale, jaw set. He held out a sealed scroll, the silver wolf of the High Council glinting on the wax. It's here, Alpha, he said quietly. Macron slipped out of bed, his chest tight. He broke the seal and read the words, each one heavier than the last. Alpha Lord Macron of Black Mountain and Claire of Old River are formally charged. Bloodline grievance. Evidence of neglect and moral failing accepted for trial. You will present yourselves before the council at the next full moon, 3 nights from now, to answer these charges. The trap was sprung. This trial wasn't just about old rumors anymore. It was about everything that mattered. Their love. His leadership. The future they wanted. As he watched the woman sleeping beside him, Macron felt it deep in his bones. Verena wasn't just out to testify against them. She was judge, jury, and if she got her way, executioner too. The council chamber loomed, cold and vast, all black stone and echoing walls. A dozen alphas perched on thrones, faces set in stone. Nobody came to listen. They came to pass judgment. Claire walked at Macron's side, head high, new sapphire gown whispering across the floor. His hand pressed steady and warm at her back. He'd kept his promise these last 3 days, told her everything, no more secrets. He'd spoken of her parents, 2 wolves who died fighting for their alpha during a rogue attack. The Old River archives called them heroes. Macron gave her the truth, and for once, she felt its weight. Not a shadow anymore. She was the daughter of heroes. At the center of the chamber, Claire found her Verena. Her mother-in-law sat near the alphas, draped in fake mourning, all empty grief. Their eyes met. Verena's lips curled in a cold, victorious smile. The council is now in session. Valerius growled, his voice rough as gravel. Grievance brought by Verena of Old River Pack. Speak. Verena rose, dabbing at dry eyes with a black lace handkerchief. "Great alphas," she said, voice wobbling with practiced sorrow. "I stand before you not with malice, but out of fear for our sacred traditions. I fear my daughter-in-law, Claire, carries a taint, a dark legacy from her parents. She spun her web. Lies, all of it. Betrayal, treason, parents selling secrets to rogues." Claire's heart hammered, but she stood tall, ready to show the records Macron had dug up, ready to fight. Then Verena pulled her ace. "And I have proof," she announced, letting her voice ring out. From her sleeve she drew a yellowed scroll, old seal and all. A signed confession from her father, admitting his treason, a document I've hidden all these years to spare the girl's shame she never deserved. A gasp rippled through the chamber. Valerius took the scroll, studying it with a frown. It was a fake. It had to be. But it looked real, too real. Verena wasn't finished. "The taint isn't just in her past. It's here now," she cried, stabbing a finger at Claire and Macron. "This alpha has been bewitched. He's abandoned his duties. While alliances crumble, he sneaks off to secret hot springs with her, marks her like a stray, flaunts his corruption for all to see." The words landed like a blow. Their private grotto, their one safe place, twisted into something filthy. Someone had spied on them. Claire's shame burned, hot and sharp. The truth she'd clung to felt useless, nothing but a thin shield against a storm. How could she fight this? The council didn't just hear lies about her parents now. They heard a twisted scrap of truth, poisoned at the edges. Macron's vision went red. Rage rolled through him, raw and wild, dredged up from old wounds. He lunged, snarling, every part of him wanting to tear Verena apart. But Torin, steady as always, grabbed his arm. "Don't, Alpha," he hissed. "She wants you to lose control." Torin was right. Macron forced himself to stop, fists clenched, so hard his knuckles blanched. "Lies!" His roar rattled the stone. "That scroll is a forgery. My mate's parents died as heroes, and I have the records to prove it." He hurled his own scroll onto the floor, his words ringing out, furious and true.
Too late now.
Doubt hadn't just crept in, it had taken over, wild and tangled, choking out anything else. Marcus, the alpha whose daughter Macron had snubbed, stood up. The room went quiet. "Records can be changed, Macron, but a signed confession? And what about the other charge? Dereliction of duty. Your alliance is broken. Isn't it true you were occupied while your borders were under threat?" He spat out occupied like it was filth. Macron felt the walls closing in. He couldn't deny being with Claire, and he wouldn't. "I was with my mate," he said, voice low and steady, a warning more than an excuse. "A bond you'll never understand, Marcus." But nobody cared about his bond. They saw arrogance, foolishness, a man blinded by love. Macron looked for help, scanning the faces of the few alphas he trusted. None of them met his gaze. Their eyes bounced between the forged confession, the shattered treaty, and Claire, this small, unknown woman at the center of everything. When it came down to it, they picked the easy answer. They believed the lie. He saw it written all over them. Alone, that's what he was now. Even his own council, Soren at the front, stood behind him in silence, and that silence hurt more than any accusation ever could. Politically, personally, he had nobody left. He turned to Claire, ready to reassure her, to promise they'd fight together. But when he caught her face, his heart broke. The fire he'd coaxed out of her, that little spark of courage gone. In its place, raw terror, the kind that goes all the way back. He saw her as the girl in the brown dress, hiding in the shadows. And in her eyes, he saw someone crushed by the certainty that every terrible thing she'd ever believed about herself was true. Verena's poison hadn't just hit home, it had destroyed her. It was all true, at least that's how it felt. The alpha stares, Soren's smug grin, his allies turning away. The whispers, the ruined treaty, the scroll, it all pointed to her. She was the curse. Her mother-in-law had been right. Her whole life, she believed she was worthless, And now the universe had handed her proof, a signed confession. She looked at Macron, standing there, king without a kingdom, warrior without an army, and it was all because of her. Her blood, her existence had dragged him down. The love she felt for him hurt, sharp and real, twisting in her chest. And just like that, she understood, real love means sacrifice. She had to save him. And the only way to save him was to cut herself out of his life. Clean like a surgeon, like a cancer. Before she even realized it, she stepped back. Once, then again. The council exploded into chaos. Alphas yelling. Verena sobbing those perfect fake tears. Nobody saw her. Nobody except Macron. He stared, desperate, horrified, he knew. He mouthed her name.
Claire.
But she was already moving. Before he could reach her, she turned and ran. Out of the chamber, through the fortress halls, her feet bare and cold. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to go. She had to vanish, to give him the only thing she had left to offer. Herself. Gone. She burst into the night. The cold slapped her, her lungs burned, and tears blurred everything into silver and shadow. Voices chased her, his loudest of all, but she didn't stop. She ran for the forest, branches catching at her dress, tearing it away until she was just Claire again. Alone, small, running for the only place she'd ever really belonged, the dark. The forest swallowed her up. For Claire, it was an old, familiar cell. The cold worked its way in, deep and pitiless, not just from the wind, but from inside her bones. She finally collapsed beside a mossy boulder, silk shredded, spirit spent. A curse, that's all she was. The scroll, the council, Macron's lost power, proof enough for anyone. Verena had won. Really, she'd won the day Claire was born. Silence closed in, thick and loud. Claire curled up, a ghost haunted by the living, and waited for the sun, for the pack's trackers, for an ending. Any ending at all. Something flickered in the darkness of her memory. Not much, a sound, a voice. Her mother's. Soft as velvet, humming an old tune she hadn't thought about in years. A lullaby about the pack, about loyalty, about the guardian wolf whose spirit shone true as the moon. Her mother sang it with so much love and pride, the kind that sticks to your bones. It was so real, so clear, it felt like the only thing inside her that hadn't been twisted by everything that happened. And it didn't fit Verena's story. Not even a little. A tiny crack opened in Verena's perfect wall of lies. Just one small, stubborn note breaking through all that despair. It wasn't proof and it wasn't hope, but it was a question. And finally, after all this time, it was hers. Back in the chaos of the council chamber, Macron kept his eyes glued to the doorway she had vanished through. His heart felt raw, torn wide open. The wolf inside him raged, a wild thing clawing at his ribs, begging to hunt, to find her, to claim her. But his mind, cold and clear after her sudden escape, knew that chasing her down would fix nothing. He couldn't drag her back. Not like this. Alpha, we have to go after her, Soren said, sounding concerned. But Macron saw straight through it. Soren just wanted to get a grip on things again. Macron turned, his eyes cold and burning all at once. Silence. The word cut straight through the noise. He moved past the stunned alphas, zeroing in on one person, Torin. His beta. His brother. Take my fastest scouts, Macron said, voice low, barely more than a growl. Go to the old river archives. Don't come back until you have the truth. The real story about Claire's parents. Go. Torin and his men slipped away into the night, and Macron stood alone in the middle of the hostile chamber. No allies. No proof. His mate lost somewhere out there, swallowed up by darkness and her own pain. All he had left was a scrap of stubborn belief burning brighter than any lie. He wasn't letting her go. Not for anything. The hours dragged. Macron paced the battlements, eyes scanning the endless black forest. The wolf inside him grew frantic, restless. He'd sent trackers to follow her. Not to capture, just to watch over her, to keep her safe from whatever lurked in the shadows. Still, every minute felt like a new torture. Just before dawn, when the sky was bruised purple, Torin finally returned. Alone. His face streaked with dirt, but his eyes, those eyes were bright with something fierce and grim. He handed Macron 2 scrolls. "You were right, Alpha," Torin said, breathless. The confession was a fake. Masterful, but fake. "These are the real records." Macron grabbed the scrolls, breaking the seals with shaking hands.
He read.
The truth hit him, hard and sharp and terrible. Claire's parents, Lyra and Ronan, died as heroes, defending their Alpha from a rogue ambush at the Western Pass. Their names were written down with honor. But that wasn't all. The second scroll hid the real traitor's name, a secret report sealed by the old Alpha himself. The wolf who betrayed the pack at the Western Pass, sold them out for a shot at power, was named Malachi, Verina's mate. Everything snapped into place. The bitterness, the jealousy, the endless cruelty. Verina's mate was the traitor. Her life destroyed, her future gone. So she took her rage and grief and turned it on the orphaned daughter of the heroes. She blamed Claire for sins that weren't hers. Spent a lifetime punishing an innocent child for her own pain. "Find her," Macron growled, voice thick with barely controlled fury. "Tell me exactly where she is." Now he had the truth. A weapon sharp enough to cut through every lie. But he understood deep down he couldn't be the one to use it. This wasn't his victory to claim. It was hers. He wouldn't rescue his mate. He'd give her the power to save herself. She found a small cave, just a shallow dip in the earth, barely enough to hide her from the cold, but at least it kept her away from the world. Huddled in the dark, she shivered, clutching the ghost of her mother's lullaby. It was all she had left. Then a scent sliced through the damp air, pine and storms. Her heart slammed into her throat. Before she could even move, he was there. He filled the cave's entrance, a dark, solid shape against the pale dawn. She scrambled back, her heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. He'd found her. He must have come to cast her out, to break the bond, to finish what the council had started. But his eyes, there was no anger there, no disgust, only a deep, aching tenderness that scared her more than any fury ever could. He didn't step inside the cave. He just knelt at the entrance, like he was waiting for permission. "Claire," he called out, voice gentle. She flinched. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words bitter and heavy. "I'm so sorry I ruined you." "You didn't," he said. "She did." He didn't say anything more. Instead, he unrolled the 2 scrolls and set them down between them with care. "This is the truth. Read it." Her hands shook as she picked up the first scroll. She read about Lyra and Ronan, their courage, what they gave up. Tears burned her eyes, hot and almost soothing. Heroes. Her parents were heroes. Then the second scroll. Malachi. Verina. The world cracked open. Every lie she'd lived with, the weight she'd mistaken for her own worthlessness, broke apart. The cage was gone. Macron watched her, his gaze sharp and unflinching. "Verina spent your whole life making you pay for her mate's betrayal. She buried you in his shame because she couldn't stand to carry it herself." He locked eyes with her, letting the truth settle. No way to run from it now. "So, here's what you do," he said, voice low and steady. "Stay here in the dark and let her lies finish your story. Let her win. Or," he leaned in, the conviction in his voice like a spark, "come with me. Walk into the council chamber, not as the accused, but as the daughter of heroes. Take back your name. Show them what a real Luna looks like." She stared at him for a long, silent moment. The old pain, the fear, the years of feeling like nothing, they hadn't vanished. But now she could see them for what they were. Lies. And underneath all that, something new started to burn. Anger. Clean and sharp. Righteous. When she finally spoke, her voice wasn't a shaky whisper anymore. It was clear and certain, the voice of someone done hiding. "She won't win." They headed back to the fortress as the sky brightened, not as an Alpha and his broken mate, but as equals. When they entered the main hall, Past guards and servants left gaping in their wake. Claire didn't slow down. She walked straight to the council's chamber, where Soren and the other elders were already scheming. She pushed the doors open and faced them. Macron stood at her side, a silent promise. But her voice commanded the room. "Elder Soren," she said, cool and steady, with an authority none of them had ever heard from her. "Tell High Alpha Valerius I've found new evidence. I demand a new council session.
Right now."
I have a grievance to file." The silence that followed felt alive, thick and heavy, and for the first time, it belonged to her. She stood in the heart of the stone amphitheater, scrolls in hand, eyes fixed on the woman who'd built her life on lies. Verina's face twisted, crumbling from smugness into something hateful and raw. Before Claire could speak, Verina snapped. "Lies. Tricks. She's a serpent, twisting the truth to save herself. That's not the official record." Claire didn't bother glancing at the High Alpha. She didn't have to. Her eyes never left Verina. "No." Her voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the hall. "Then you won't mind if the High Alpha sends a neutral party to the old river archives to check. Unless, of course, you're afraid of what they'll find." Verina started to shake as the truth unraveled, her mask shattering.
"She's a witch."
"She has him. She has all of you bewitched." "No, Aunt," Claire said, the word like a stone in her mouth. "I'm not a witch. I'm just not your shadow anymore." She turned to the assembled alphas, her voice rising, strong and steady. She held up the first scroll. "This is the truth about Lyra and Ronan, my parents. They weren't traitors or cowards. They were heroes who died for their pack." She raised the second scroll, her voice turning sharp and cold. "And this is the truth about the real traitor, a wolf named Malachi. His mate sits before you now, having spent a lifetime burying me in her own shame." The tension snapped. Suddenly, every alpha was on their feet, the air thick with growls, angry, shocked, raw. Now all eyes were on Verina, and sympathy had vanished. In its place, pure contempt. In just a heartbeat, everything shifted. Judgment, suspicion,
Hatred.
it all zeroed in on her, and Claire felt the weight lift off her shoulders. Claire stepped right up to the woman who'd haunted her for so long. Verina shrank away, wild-eyed and desperate, no trace of her old cunning left. She looked awful, stripped of her lies, just a cornered animal. Claire leaned in, voice low. "You tried to bury me with your lies," she breathed, the words meant for Verina alone, but inside, something fierce and victorious roared. "But you forgot I was a seed." She didn't give her another glance. She turned away from her mother-in-law and walked to Macron. He stood waiting, watching, and the look in his eyes, dark, proud, absolutely unbreakable, made her chest ache. The trial was over. She hadn't just survived. She'd won. Macron watched her come to him. For so long, his world had felt shattered and wrong. Now, with every step she took, it slid back into place. She was fire, steel, and a courage that stunned him. She hadn't needed his strength. She'd found her own, and by doing it, she'd saved them both. The chamber was chaos, but he only saw her. When she reached him, there was nothing to say. He just took her hand, fingers twining with hers. A silent promise, stronger than any words. Then Valerius's voice cut through the noise, cold, furious. "Verina of the former Old River Pack." He glared at her, jaw set. "You've been found guilty of bearing false witness to this council, the highest crime among us. You've slandered heroes, twisted pack law for revenge, lied again and again." Each word hit like a stone. "So this council sentences you, stripped of your name and your pack.
Outcast.
Unmated. Unwolfed. Unwanted. You'll be taken to the barren lands and left. If any wolf ever sees you again, they'll have the right to kill you on sight." It was harsh. It was the closest thing to justice they'd ever get. Verina howled, a last, broken sound, as the guards yanked her from the chamber. She fought, spat, kicked. But she was gone. Silence fell. One by one, the alphas who'd turned their backs on Macron approached. Marcus of Silver Dawn reached them first. He looked pale, beaten. Alpha Macron, Luna Claire, he said, bowing his head. I was wrong. I ask for your forgiveness. Macron started to answer, but Claire squeezed his hand. Her voice was soft but sure. An alliance built on truth is stronger than one built on convenience, Alpha Marcus. Maybe, with time, we can build something new. Macron's chest filled with pride. She wasn't just his mate, she was his equal, his partner. The other alphas murmured their agreement. Respect, real and unshakable, filled the room. The old wounds would heal, stronger, because she'd been the one to close them. He had a pact to lead, alliances to rebuild, a future to shape. This time, he knew he wouldn't do it alone. When the council finally broke up, he turned to her, the rest of the room fading out. Let's go home, my Luna. Weeks slipped by. One night, with the world cool and quiet, Claire stood on their balcony, the same one where Macron had once stood alone. She wore a simple sapphire gown, the black mountain Luna cloak draped over her shoulders. It didn't feel like a mask anymore. It felt like her own skin. The air shifted. He stepped behind her, arms sliding around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. He was so real, so warm. That scent, pine and storms, didn't scare her now. It smelled like home. They stood there, silent, watching moonlight spill silver over the woods and the sleeping pack. He murmured in her ear, voice low and gentle. Are you happy? Claire shifted in his arms and reached up, her hands gentle on his face. She met his eyes, deep, dark, always burning with something fierce inside. Not a trace of darkness, just that wild spark waiting to break free. In that moment, old memories flickered by. She saw the girl who scrubbed spotless floors until her knees ached. The ghost of herself, hiding behind columns in a brown dress. And then, her gaze landed on her own reflection in the glass doors leading out to the balcony. There she was, a woman with strength in her eyes and a soft, knowing smile. She looked like Luna. She looked like herself. More than happy, she whispered, the words thick, tangled up in a feeling too big for any name. I'm whole. He seemed drawn to her, like there was a string between them pulling him close. He bent his head and kissed her. This kiss wasn't rushed or desperate like before in the training yard. It wasn't gentle and new, like the one they'd shared in the hot spring, either. No, this was different. It was laughter. It was quiet promises. It was the kind of kiss that carried a future that felt impossibly bright, stretching out forever. It was a kiss between a king and his queen, a wolf and his mate, a man and a woman who'd walked through fire together and come out of it stronger, unbreakable.
Together.
Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story touched your heart and made you believe in their destined mate bond, please give this video a like. To stay whole with our pack and ensure you receive every new story the moment it drops, please take a moment to subscribe. We're building an unbreakable pack right here.